Savannah, I'm coming home. Savannah, we'll never be alone. Savannah.
Solo farming in the tower. One day, a mysterious tower suddenly appeared in the city. The people decided to call it a dungeon, and while it was full of rugged terrain and dangerous monsters, it was also a land of opportunity, where countless treasures awaited. When Sejun, a young man living an ordinary life, is invited to the dungeon by chance, he is thrilled at the prospect of becoming rich, but he is stranded in a hidden area of the mysterious tower. All he is a few seeds and his body. Now Sejun must farm, collect resources, and figure out his own survival strategy. Genre: action, adventure, fantasy, romance, slice of life, supernatural. Chapter 1. Is anyone here? Sigh, I'm exhausted. Completely drained. Despite his monthly salary barely reaching 2 million won, Sejun manages to save 1 million won each month by cutting down on living expenses after paying his rent and student loan installments. This has allowed him to accumulate a sum of 12 million won in his savings account. However, even though this is a considerable amount, it falls short of Sejun's goal. Phew, when will I ever be able to buy a ticket? Can I even afford one? Sejun sighed, overwhelmed by his challenging objective. A mysterious 99-story black tower appeared out of nowhere in the heart of Gangnam, Seoul. 10 years ago, the tower boasted geometric patterns and a structure defying the laws of physics. Towers of a similar nature appeared simultaneously in 100 cities across the globe. Although each country conducted an investigation into the tower that emerged within their borders, they reaped little benefit from their findings. The information they uncovered revealed that the tower stood 990 meters tall, constructed from a material so strong that even a nuclear bomb couldn't damage it, and had no visible entrance. In an unexpected turn of events, people started emerging from the tower one by one. They seemed to pass through the walls of the tower naturally. Investigators swiftly identified these individuals, learning that they were people who had recently vanished. How did you enter the tower? Responding to the investigators' questions, they explained that they hadn't entered the tower but had been sucked into a black hole. When they regained consciousness, they found themselves on the first floor of the tower. Thus, information about the tower began to unfold through the accounts of those who emerged from it. The 100 towers are interconnected as a single entity. Upon entering the tower, you awaken and assume the role of either a magician or a warrior. Monsters inhabit the tower from the second floor upward, growing stronger as the floors ascend. Rewards are given for clearing each floor, with the value of rewards increasing with each level. However, there are no rewards for clearing the same floor twice. No one understood the purpose of these towers, but one thing was certain: climbing the tower generated wealth. Items obtained within the tower fetched high prices on Earth. Among the items was something called a ticket. Tickets were one of the primary sources of income for the awakened, with a high probability of obtaining one or more tickets upon clearing a floor. Those who had already awakened didn't require a ticket to enter the tower. However, ordinary people with tickets could access the tower. Once inside the tower, they would awaken and gain the qualification to ascend. Consequently, tickets were neither cheap nor easy to acquire. In Korea, for example, the Korean Awakened Association purchased tickets from hunters in bulk and resold them. The price was set at 150 million won per ticket. Due to high demand, news surfaced that the price would soar to 200 million won within a week. Hundreds of people had already paid in advance, eagerly awaiting their chance to purchase a ticket. I can't give up. Upon seeing frequent news about people getting rich through tower tickets, Sejun made a bold decision: grow crops at home. It was a way to tighten his belt even further. He didn't intend to cultivate anything extraordinary. He planned to grow a few low-maintenance plants to save on living expenses. I'll start today. With that, he bought some green onions and a few other items at the supermarket before heading home. He, Sejun hummed a tune, filled with determination. If I start growing fruits and vegetables at home, I can save a lot on food expenses and enjoy an abundance of produce. This is how I'll save money to buy a ticket and enter the tower. Then, I'll earn loads of money in the tower for Serang and me. Sejun daydreamed about Serang, a member of Korea's top girl group Moonlight Fairy. In other words, it was Sejun's own fantasy. While Sejun was lost in his daydream and walking with a goofy grin, a black hole appeared in the empty space in front of him, and then, whoosh, it began to suck in everything around it. What is this? Sejun was greatly startled upon discovering the black hole, which didn't reveal its other side. It's a vanishing. Vanishing was a phenomenon where people were sucked into the tower. All the first awakened ones went through a vanishing. Anyway, it's very fortunate, harder to come by than winning the lottery. Sejun hurriedly sent messages to his family, worried that they might look for him if he disappeared without a word. When he finished sending the messages, "Why am I still here? Even if I got sucked into a hole, I should have been sucked in a long time ago." Sejun kept staring at the black hole, waiting for it to take him, but there was no sign that the suction force was getting stronger. "Hurry up and take me already." "Huh? Why is it shrinking?" The hole was even closing. "No, my future." Sarang. Sejun made up his mind. The future was for pioneers. "That's right, I'm going in." Sejun charged into the hole. With that, he disappeared into the pitch-black darkness. "Where am I?" As soon as Sejun exited the hole, he realized something was off. The information he heard about the first floor of the tower was very different from what he saw. On the first floor of the tower, there were supposed to be luxurious chandeliers lighting up the area, white marble floors, a spacious plaza with shops selling equipment and potions, and training centers where warriors and magicians could learn skills. But this place was a cave made of rocks, not even a single shop or training center in sight. The only similarity with the first floor of the tower was that it was spacious. The only saving grace was that there was no luxurious chandelier lighting, but a single beam of sunlight illuminated the cave through a hole in the ceiling. "Let's find the exit first." Sejun looked around for a way out. The first place he marked as a potential exit was the hole in the cave ceiling. However, climbing the wall to reach the arched hole in the ceiling seemed impossible unless he was Spider-Man. "Let's look for another place." Sejun placed his bag on a rock and began to explore the cave. A moment later, "Why is this place so vast?" The cave was much more extensive than he had thought. The far end of the cave was so dark that he could hardly see anything since the sunlight couldn't reach it. "I have to conserve power." But, Sejun reluctantly turned on his smartphone's flashlight on a low setting and continued exploring the cave. 3 hours later, the cave exploration was over. The cave was completely blocked off in all directions. He checked every gap between the rocks and weak points, but there was no place that seemed like a possible exit. "There's no exit. Did I end up stranded?" Sejun mumbled as if he had lost his mind, and trudged back to the place where the sun was shining through the hole in the cave ceiling. What should I do? He had to admit it. It was impossible for him to get out of here alone. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Sejun shouted desperately towards the hole in the cave ceiling. But, "Hi, I'm here, Tilda." Sejun's desperate shout couldn't escape the hole and only circled inside the cave. "Hello, is there someone here?" Sejun screamed until his throat was about to burst, but not a single person, let alone anything, passed by near the hole. "Damn it, can anyone hear me?" Exclamation mark. Thump. Sejun couldn't hold back his anger and kicked the ground for no reason. And so, a day had passed, day 2 of being lost, May 11th, 6 a.m. Beep beep beep. The alarm he had set for work rang. Ugh. Sejun got up with difficulty from the uncomfortable sleeping place and turned off the alarm on his smartphone. Sejun, who had just woken up, stared at the hole in the cave ceiling all day. Even after several hours had passed, no one passed by. "Is there anyone?" Sejun's shout was only reflected off the damp rocks and returned as a gloomy echo. "Ji-ah-rah-rah." Sejun's stomach grumbled, although he was worried. He had to eat to survive. "Ugh, I'm really hungry." He realized that he hadn't eaten anything since he left work. "What should I eat?" Sejun found a flat rock to sit on and settled down, and then, rustle. He took out an apple wrapped in a plastic bag from his bag. It was a washed apple given to him by a co-worker at the office. "Thank you, Min-jun." Sejun decided that if he ever got out of here, he would repay Min-jun with sweet and sour pork. It's not that Min-jun liked sweet and sour pork, but Sejun was craving it with black bean noodles right now. So, Sejun resolved to treat Min-jun to sweet and sour pork and ripped open the plastic packaging to take a big bite of the apple. Crunch. The sweet and sour juice of the apple filled his mouth. "It's so delicious." As his appetite returned, his hunger became uncontrollable. Crunch, crunch. Sejun was devouring the apple as if he was possessed. He stared at the remaining apple core and seeds with a forlorn expression. The amount was insufficient. Thump, thump. Sejun dug a shallow hole with his foot and buried the apple seeds and core together. Then, he started to take out the items from his bag. A laptop, 500 milliliters of water left from the office, green onions, cherry tomatoes, and sweet potatoes he had bought to grow at home. 1, 2, 3. Sejun began to count the cherry tomatoes in the plastic container. He wanted to accurately understand the amount of food he had. 27 cherry tomatoes, 10 green onion stalks, and 7 sweet potatoes. For now, he planted all the green onions, 3 cherry tomatoes, and 2 sweet potatoes, and left the rest as food. Cherry tomatoes have many seeds inside, so even just 3 of them can yield a lot of plants. As for sweet potatoes, they were the only available food that could provide carbohydrates, but he couldn't plant many of them. First, let's fill up my stomach. Sejun washed the sweet potato and 5 cherry tomatoes in the small pond. It was fortunate that there was a small pond in the corner of the cave. At least he could find water. It would have been nice if there were fish too. There were no creatures the size of tadpoles in the pond. Sejun realized there were no insects or small animals like mice in the cave either. Sejun would normally be scared by insects or mice, but now that there were none, it felt strange. He had seen many scenes in movies where people ate insects or mice when there was no food. Really, if the food runs out, I might have to eat something like that. Of course, it would be best to escape this place before the food runs out. As he chewed the sweet potato, the crisp sound made his scattered thoughts disappear. Now was the time to focus on the sweet potato. Yum yum, it was delicious. The more he chewed, the sweeter it became. He always boiled or roasted sweet potatoes, but he thought it was fine to eat them raw sometimes. Now, let's get to work. After finishing 1 sweet potato and 5 cherry tomatoes, Sejun picked up a green onion, and then, he broke off about 1/3 of the green leafy part from the root of the onion, placed it separately on the ground. I'll eat it later. Although it wouldn't taste good, he might have to eat it to survive. Sejun buried the white part of the onion root in the soft soil where the sunlight entered. Then he planted 2 sweet potatoes on the left side and cherry tomatoes on the right side. He simply buried the sweet potatoes in the ground and planted the seeds that came out of the crushed cherry tomatoes. He sucked the tomato juice off his hands and went to the pond. He filled a 500 milliliters water bottle with pond water and watered the crops he had just planted. When the work was finished, Sejun lay down on a rock, looking at the ceiling, and waited for someone to pass by. He tried to minimize energy consumption due to the lack of food and occasionally shouted, "Is anyone here?" But no one passed by. Beep beep, beep beep. May 12th, 6 a.m. Day 3 of being lost. Chapter 2, Which floor is this? Thud. Sleeping on the floor made my body so stiff. The good thing about this place is that there is no night, so, if you sleep where the sun is just right, you can sleep comfortably at a pleasant temperature. Splash, splash. Sejun washed his face briefly at the pond, and then, splash, swish, swash. He washed the sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes he would eat today. It feels strange to wash them with the water I use to wash my face. Sejun put aside his discomfort and bit into a sweet potato. Crunch. The more I chew, the sweeter it becomes. Did I ever have the luxury of chewing on something sweet like this without having to go to work? He sat down on a dry patch of dirt where the sun was shining, laid out his bag, and chewed on a sweet potato slowly. There was complete silence, except for the sound of chewing. His heartbeat started to slow down, and his mind also calmed down. He was lost, and his food would run out in a few days. He might starve to death. Strange. Sejun tilted his head. He was amazed by his own feelings, but it was better than being anxious. Every time Manager Go called out Sejun, "Can you come over here for a minute?" my heart would race. But, how peaceful it is now. Sejun leisurely enjoyed the sweet potato, relishing the peace that he couldn't feel easily before. Shall we move on to the next menu? After finishing the sweet potato, Sejun put a cherry tomato in his mouth and chewed. Pop. The skin of the cherry tomato couldn't withstand the pressure of Sejun's teeth and burst. Sourness filled his mouth as the juice of the cherry tomato exploded. It's delicious. It was so delicious that he doubted whether it was the same cherry tomato he usually ate. Perhaps his taste buds had become extremely sensitive due to hunger. Sejun focused solely on the taste of the cherry tomato and chewed slowly. However, chewing on the cherry tomato for a long time didn't make it taste better, so the 5 cherry tomatoes quickly disappeared into Sejun's mouth. After finishing his meal, Sejun began his daily routine, staring at the hole in the ceiling. Middle dot middle dot middle dot middle dot middle dot middle dot. Sejun stared blankly at the hole in the ceiling. Middle dot middle dot middle dot. I'm bored. Of course, he occasionally shouted. Is anyone here? But even that was done while looking at the ceiling. After staring at the ceiling for several hours, it was so tiring that he felt like he was going crazy. Is there anything to do? Sejun started looking for something to do. Let's water the crops first. Sejun filled a water bottle and watered the onions, cherry tomatoes, and sweet potatoes. Jol jol jol. Grow fast, grow huge. Daddy is hungry. He went back and forth to the pond 3 times, thoroughly soaking the ground where the crops were planted. Then, grug, his stomach informed him of the fuel shortage. Just moving a little made him hungry again. Sejun poured the remaining water from the water bottle into his mouth. Gulp, gulp. He felt his stomach fill up a bit. Sejun returned to his spot and stared at the hole in the ceiling. After several hours, Sejun stared blankly at the ceiling when, beep beep, beep beep, the alarm went off. May 12th, 10 p.m. There is no sunset here, so, he set the alarm to match his bedtime. It's time to sleep. Sejun got up and prepared for bed. There wasn't much to do in terms of preparation. Tap tap, he leveled the dirt floor where he would lie down and covered his head with his bag so he couldn't see the sun. That was the end of his bedtime preparations. Surprisingly, sleep came easily, in the middle of the night, by Sejun's standards. Gra-ra-ra-ra, gra-ra-ra-ra, gra. Sejun woke up from sleep due to the ground shaking vibrations. What's going on? Just then, gra-ra-ra, he felt another strong vibration. It was close. Sejun hurriedly removed the bag from his face and got up, and then he witnessed the bizarre scene. What is this? The light coming down from the cave ceiling had turned blue, and, screech, caw. He heard strange, threatening noises. At that moment, roar, a huge black dragon appeared in the sky and roared. The sight of it flying high alone, cutting through the blue light, was astonishingly beautiful. The black dragon roared and disappeared gracefully. The other monsters became silent, perhaps frightened by the dragon's roar. However, Sejun's mind was noisier than ever. Monsters. This can't be happening. Sejun thought something was wrong. He believed that this place was somewhere on the first floor of the tower. He wanted to believe that the light illuminating the cave all day was the chandelier lighting of the first floor of the tower, but there were no monsters on the first floor. In other words, Sejun was not on the first floor of the tower. Moreover, the blue moon, where the sun turns blue, every floor has sunlight all day long. But on each floor, there is a periodic time when the sun turns blue. Hunters call this phenomenon the blue moon. During the blue moon, monsters become more aggressive and powerful, so hunters avoid the floors where the blue moon occurs. The blue moon is a phenomenon that occurs only on the 10th floor and above. This meant that Sejun was on the 10th floor or above. There was still a chance he could be rescued. However, there's a catch. That was the dragon. After the tower appeared 10 years ago, the Phoenix Guild, the most powerful force on Earth, recently achieved the feat of clearing the 37th floor. From the 31st to the 37th floor, guilds were keeping each other in check, so they didn't release any information. But below the 30th floor, quite a few clear videos were uploaded to YouTube for money or publicity. According to the known information, skeletons appear on floors 210, goblins on 1120, orcs on 2030, and from the 31st floor onwards, spider monsters appear. Although no videos were released, this was credible information, as multiple hunters had mentioned it in interviews. None of them mentioned dragons. They hadn't even heard of lizard-like monsters appearing in the tower. Which floor is this? Sejun clutched his head and wailed. He might have been stranded on a floor that even the top hunters had not reached. Why is this happening to me? Sejun looked at the hole in the ceiling with a heavy heart. bathed in blue light. However, his purpose had changed. Previously, he had looked up hoping someone would pass by, but now he hoped that no one would. After seeing the dragon, Sejun realized that there were monsters in this place. Beep beep, beep beep. May 13th, 6 a.m. The alarm went off. Sejun greeted the fourth day with sleepless eyes after standing guard all night. Fortunately, the blue moon turned back to its usual yellowish light around 4 a.m., 5 hours later. Sejun's head drooped as he stood guard. Then he fell into a deep sleep. It was understandable, as he had been keeping watch, staring at the ceiling since yesterday. Water. As soon as he woke up, Sejun felt a burning thirst. He fumbled for the water bottle he had placed beside him, and then, gulp, gulp. He drank the water in one shot. Phew, now I feel alive. His thirst quenched, hunger set in. He went to the pond and quickly washed his face, as well as 5 sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes. Sejun chewed on a sweet potato while looking at the hole in the ceiling. Even if I don't know where I am, if it's above the 41st floor, the chances of someone coming are almost 0%. That meant he had to survive on his own. Sejun looked at the field where he had planted crops. Should I water them? Thinking that he had to survive on his own made the crops seem more precious. He watered them. You guys have to be strong. Sweet potatoes grow huge. Tomatoes bear lots of fruit. Green onion. Just grow big and strong. He watered the plants and spoke kindly to them. He had heard on the news that playing music for plants could help them grow, so he thought a few kind words wouldn't hurt. After watering the plants, Sejun sat down and stared at the hole in the ceiling again. However, boredom quickly set in. Should I eat this? Sejun saw the green onion leaves he had pulled off when planting the roots on the first day. It's spicy. As soon as he put the green onion leaves in his mouth and chewed, a spicy taste filled his mouth, accompanied by the strong scent of green onions. The taste had become more concentrated after drying in the sun for a couple of days. Sejun continued to chew without swallowing. There's sweetness in green onion too. As he kept chewing, the spiciness faded, and the hidden sweetness of the green onions gradually emerged. Great. He chewed on the green onion and managed to endure drowsy afternoon hours, and then, beep beep, beep beep. May 13th, 10 p.m. The fourth night of the ordeal had come. Will I be okay tonight? Sejun couldn't fall asleep easily. The monsters had been active at dawn because of the blue moon. However, that didn't mean they were friendly when it wasn't a blue moon. Sejun decided to prepare a sleeping place where there was no light. It would be cold, but nothing was more important than his life, since he didn't have to sleep under the sun. He folded his bag and used it as a pillow, and then, as soon as Sejun laid his head on the bag, he fell asleep snoring. While Sejun was asleep, the scallions with their roots in the ground began to grow in earnest. Beep beep, beep beep. The alarm went off. May 14th, 6 o'clock a.m. The fifth day of survival began. Sejun's eyes opened wide. Why do I feel so light? Sejun stretched out refreshingly. He always felt heavy when waking up, but today his body felt extremely light. In addition, he thought it would be cold sleeping without the sun, but it wasn't cold. Is it because the fatigue from working at the company has been relieved? Sejun thought it was strange and went to the pond. Splash, splash. He washed his face and picked out the sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes to eat today. When he picked up the sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes for today, half of the food in the plastic container had disappeared. There wasn't much food left. Should I start eating only half from today? Sejun washed the picked sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes while pondering. Pop, pop, and snap. He cut the sweet potato in half and put half of it and 3 cherry tomatoes back into the plastic container. He was already running out of food, and the thought of having to cut back even more was disheartening. Sigh. Sejun sighed and moved to his usual spot with flat rocks well lit by the sun and sat down. However, something felt off. He was in the shade. What's this? The scallion, which had grown to Sejun's height, was blocking the sun that should have always been shining. There was no significant difference when he looked at it while watering it yesterday. And there was no change before going to bed. The scallions had grown tremendously overnight. When did it grow like this? As Sejun approached and examined it closely, The white part where the scallion roots were had grown to the thickness of the wrist. Sejun grabbed and tore off one of the new scallion leaves. Ah, what? The scallion leaves appeared fragile as they fluttered in the wind, yet they were surprisingly tough. Ugh! Sejun put in effort and tore off the leaf. What? Why is it like this all of a sudden? It seemed that the appearance or plants changed depending on the climate and habitat. How will it taste? He hoped that the taste would change as much as the appearance had. Sejun put the scallion leaf in his mouth and chewed. Chapter 3, Sprouting. Crunch. The scallion leaf was cut off with a pleasant sound, easier than expected. The texture was good as well. As soon as he chewed the scallion, a spicy taste spread throughout his mouth. His body warmed up from the spiciness, his pores opened and sweat poured out like rain. Swallowing his saliva, Sejun wiped the flowing sweat and continued to chew the scallion. However, the expected sweetness didn't come. I thought the sweetness would be stronger because the spiciness became stronger. It seemed that the taste had become entirely spicy. Gulp. When he swallowed the scallion, the spiciness disappeared cleanly. Fortunately, it didn't upset his stomach. I can eat the scallions when I crave something spicy. Crunch. Sejun continued to eat the scallions, which only had a spicy taste. For now, he had to satisfy his hunger, so Sejun seemed to have eaten about a foot of scallions while dripping with sweat. Somehow, the more he sweated, the lighter his body felt. Crunch, crunch. Sejun, who filled his stomach with scallions, mercilessly broke the scallions that provided shade in his spot. It was not because he was venting his anger since there was no sweetness at all. Well, let's not say it's absolute. I was a little hopeful. He laid the broken scallions in a place well exposed to sunlight. Today, he started his work a little late because of the scallions, but it didn't matter. The work was drip, 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 briefly watering the crops and staring blankly at the hole in the ceiling. Still, something had appeared to relieve his boredom. When he stared blankly at the ceiling for a while, the scallions had grown significantly in the meantime. Do scallions usually grow this fast? He even checked the time on his smartphone to see if it was just his imagination. The scallions grew about 10 centimeters per hour, an astonishing growth rate. Sejun, who had no farming experience, thought this was impossible. Is it because they were grown in the tower? There was nothing else to suspect. They were just scallions that he had bought from the market. If the seeds had truly been scallions that grew 10 centimeters per hour, they would have been called golden scallions, but there's no growth from these guys. Sejun glanced at the spots where he had planted cherry tomatoes and sweet potatoes next to the scallions. If the soil was the reason for the scallions' miraculous growth, then other things would grow well too. However, there was no change in the ground. Is this soil only suitable for growing scallions? With a suspicious mind, he looked more closely. Upon closer inspection, the soil where the sweet potatoes were planted remained the same, but the soil where the cherry tomatoes were planted seemed slightly bulging. Sejun lay down on the ground and stared intently at the bulging soil. There it was. A green stem with a shiny yellow head emerged shyly between the soil, revealing its appearance. 1, 2, 3. There were a total of 52 sprouts. Sejun stared at the cherry tomato sprouts for a long time. So cute. He felt a sense of pride just by looking at the plants he had grown himself and seeing them grow so well. It made him feel accomplished. Beep beep, beep beep. May 15th, 6 a.m. Sejun welcomed the 6th day's morning. Yesterday, he spent the whole day just looking at the cherry tomato sprouts. They didn't grow as fast as the scallions, but watching them grow little by little over time made him feel full even without eating. Sejun got up lightly from his seat. Lately, his body was getting lighter day by day. At first, he thought it was because the fatigue from overwork had been relieved, but recently, he began to think that it might not be the case. Let's see, have our sprouts grown a lot? As soon as he got up, Sejun went to see the cherry tomato sprouts without washing his face or eating. He was very curious about how much they had grown while he was sleeping. The ends of the sprouts, their greenish-yellow heads, were slightly split. However, a dark shadow blocked the sprouts. The scallions had grown back to Sejun's height, blocking the light that should have reached the cherry tomato sprouts. Crunch, crunch. Sejun mercilessly broke off the scallion leaves. Phew. After breaking all the scallions, Sejun hurried to the pond. Splash, splash. He quickly finished washing his face and gulp, 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 filled a water bottle and plastic container with water to water the soil around the cherry tomato sprouts, as well as the scallions and sweet potato field. I don't hate you, you know. He especially gave the scallions plenty of water. When he finished watering, gurgle, his stomach demanded payment, as if there could be no unpaid labor. Time to eat breakfast. Sejun put a scallion he had just broken into his mouth. Crunch, crunch. After eating only scallion leaves yesterday instead of sweet potatoes and cherry tomatoes, he thought he could satisfy his hunger well enough. His stomach didn't feel empty, nor did he feel drained of energy. Somehow, it felt like carbohydrates were being absorbed, and, most importantly, there was plenty of it, growing about 180 centimeters per day. There was actually so much that it was difficult to handle. For now, I need to dry them well and store them. Looking at the current situation, it seemed unlikely that the well-growing leeks would suddenly stop growing, but Sejun decided to prepare for the unexpected. No one can predict affairs. Who would have thought that he would be stranded in an unknown place like this? He decided to plant the remaining cherry tomatoes and sweet potatoes for more food in the future. Thud, thud. Sejun dug into the soil and planted the cherry tomatoes and sweet potatoes, and then, trickle, trickle, grow big and strong. He gave them plenty of water along with his encouragement and sat on his designated seat, a flat rock where the sun shined well. He felt a sense of accomplishment after doing something productive. The sky is nice. The blue sky was clear and beautiful. The human heart was fickle. He thought to himself. Despite feeling suffocated yesterday, he found the sky to be pleasant today. Come to think of it, he had been staring at the sky for days. I never really looked at the sky for days when I was working at the company. I'm living a good life. However, that feeling was short-lived. I feel like something's missing. If only I had coffee here. He really wanted an iced Americano with an extra shot. He missed his city life. As Sejun looked at the sky, reminiscing about city life. Beep, beep. He received a notification that his smartphone battery had dropped below 20%. He had set the screen to low power mode and only looked at it when needed, but he couldn't completely prevent battery consumption. Let's charge it with this for now. Sejun opened his laptop and pressed the power button. A smartphone that consumed less power than a laptop and informed him of the time to wake up and sleep was more useful. Blink. The laptop screen lit up, showing an Excel window with work he had been doing. It was an estimate to send to a client, which he hadn't finished at the company and had intended to complete at home. Click. Sejun closed the Excel window without any hesitation. Of course, he didn't save anything, although it was an estimate he had worked on for several days. He didn't feel any regret. Besides, it was already too late. Someone else will do it instead. He felt a little sorry for the person who would take over, but it wasn't a situation where he could do anything about it. Sejun connected his smartphone and laptop and charged his phone. He also turned on low power mode for the laptop to reduce battery consumption, and while his smartphone was charging, he looked at the cherry tomato sprouts. No matter how many times he looked, it made him feel good, as he was watching the cherry tomato sprouts for a while. Drip, 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 water dropped from above. What, is it raining? Sejun knew that wasn't the case. Even as he spoke, apart from a few flaws, the tower always had clear weather. Could it be a monster? He got goosebumps imagining a monster looking down at him and drooling. Sejun hastily looked up, but, in the hole in the ceiling, there was a small white rabbit, drooling as it looked down through the hole. Is that a monster too? Sejun was wondering if the rabbit he saw in front of him was a ferocious monster when suddenly, squeak, as the rabbit's eyes met Sejun's, it let out a cute cry and jumped down from the hole. Boing, it's dangerous. Sejun instinctively reached out his hand towards the falling rabbit, not knowing if it was a monster or not. However, the rabbit adjusted its falling direction using its long ears, avoiding Sejun's hand, stepped on his shoulder with both feet, and safely landed on the ground. It was quite embarrassing to have his hand outstretched in the air. At that moment, squeak, the rabbit cautiously approached him while walking on two legs and pointed to the scallion with its trembling finger. seeing it walk on two legs. It was not just an ordinary rabbit. "Can you eat this?" Squeak, the rabbit answered, nodding its head vigorously. There was a desperate plea in its eyes for approval. "Here." Snap. Sejun broke off a whole scallion leaf and gave it to the rabbit. Squeak, crunch, crunch. The rabbit started eating the scallion leaf Sejun handed over without hesitation. Snap, snap. While the rabbit was eating the scallion, Sejun broke off more leaves. He decided to break them all. From then on, Sejun planned to cut the scallions once at 6 a.m. and once at 2 p.m. so the cherry tomato seedlings could get some sun. Crunch, crunch. The rabbit was still eagerly eating the scallion. So far, it had eaten a length equivalent to 2 finger joints. Sejun watched the rabbit and then looked back at the cherry tomatoes. The tips of the cherry tomato seedlings were gradually opening. Soon, they would have leaves. How much time had passed? Gurgle. The sound of the rabbit sleeping could be heard next to him. It seemed sleepy now that its stomach was full. Its soft snoring was quite cute. At that moment, squeak, feeling Sejun's gaze, the rabbit woke up with a start. Shake. The rabbit shook its head to get rid of its sleepiness, and then, squeak, it jumped with a powerful cry. Flick. The rabbit held a scallion in one hand and easily climbed back up to the hole. Squeak. Before leaving, the rabbit bowed its head to Sejun in gratitude. "You just eat and run away." Although it was ungrateful, Sejun waved goodbye. It was a brief encounter, but it was pleasant. While Sejun waved, the rabbit left. Even though it was only for a moment, it felt empty. Sejun left the emptiness behind and looked back at the cherry tomato seedlings. In the meantime, the seedlings had gathered strength and spread their leaves even wider. "Grow up, guys." A little later. Why? As if knowing Sejun was waiting, the cherry tomato seedlings began to unfold one by one, revealing 2 bright green leaves each. The sight of the delicate but vibrant leaves emerging was quite wondrous. Beep, beep. May 15th, 10 p.m. The alarm to announce the evening rang. However, he didn't want to sleep tonight. He wanted to keep watching the seedlings grow and then fall asleep. Splat, splat. Sejun woke up to the feeling of something lightly hitting his cheek. "Huh? What is it?" When he opened his eyes, the rabbit that had run away yesterday was slapping his cheek with its paw to wake him up. What time is it?" Sejun checked the time. May 16th, 5 a.m. It was an hour earlier than his usual waking time. "But what's with your outfit?" The rabbit wore a straw hat with holes for its ears to stick out and held a watering can in its hand. At that moment, squeak, another rabbit's cry was heard. "Huh?" Sejun looked towards the sound, and there was another slender rabbit wearing an apron, and then, Nod, the rabbit that made eye contact with Sejun politely greeted him. "What's going on here?" Day 7 of being lost. Sejun woke up a little early, and a rabbit couple had joined the cave. Chapter 4, Lighting a Fire. Sejun quickly sensed the pink atmosphere flowing between the two. "Are you two a couple?" Squeak, squeak. They both nodded at the same time. Damn, being caught between a rabbit couple. He once had no friends with matching free time in college, so he had to eat with a couple. It was awkward, but he couldn't eat alone for a whole semester, so he joined them. One day while eating together, a sudden tension arose between the couple, leading to a heated argument. Sejun felt very uncomfortable while being stuck between them. "And then I acquired the skill to eat by myself. After that, he vowed never to eat with a couple again." Squeak, squeak. Feeling Sejun's strange mood, the husband rabbit rubbed its face against Sejun's hand, trying desperately to win his approval to stay. It was a desperate gesture to protect their home, working so hard to protect their family. Sejun's heart softened. He felt ashamed for still being stuck in the past. That's right. They were a couple, and these two are a married couple. Sejun didn't know the profound world of a married couple. "All right, you can stay here, but it's not for free." He didn't expect anything in return. Squeak, squeak. Upon Sejun's approval, the rabbit couple nodded vigorously and ran to a corner of the cave, digging a burrow to create their own dwelling. A burrow? Watching the rabbit dig the burrow, Sejun had a sudden idea. He wondered if they could dig a burrow to get out of here. Stupid me, I only thought about the hole above because it was there. Rabbit, squeak. The husband rabbit, busy digging the ground, peeked out at Sejun's call. Can you dig a tunnel to get out of here? Squeak. The rabbit thought for a moment and shook its head. No. Swish, swish. The rabbit began drawing a picture on the ground. It drew the cave where Sejun was and started digging deep underneath, and then, whoosh, it poured water from the watering can into the dug hole. The bottom of Sejun's cave filled with water. Ah, the bottom is all water. Squeak. The rabbit nodded. Okay, keep doing what you were doing. Squeak. The rabbit went back to digging its burrow. At that moment, beep, beep, the alarm rang. The smartphone battery was at 100%. Considering the discharge rate of the laptop, it seemed like he could recharge it once more. May 16th, 6 a.m. Sejun's daily routine began. First, he checked the tomato seedlings. Good job, guys. Now, the green leaves were fully blossomed. There was still no news from the sweet potato field. Sejun went to the pond, washed his face, and watered the field, and then, snap, snap, he broke off some leaves so the tomato seedlings could get some sunlight. The more he broke the leaves, the thicker and the more split the stems became, producing more leaves. At first, there were about 3 leaves per plant, but now there were 8. Will it become chore to break these later? Sejun dried the torn leaves in the sunlight. The leaves that were already in the sun had now hardened, almost moisture-free. Crunch. Sejun finished his morning work while eating the freshly torn leaves. Now, after 8 hours, he just had to break the leaves once more and water them to finish the day's work. Sejun, who had finished his work, sat in his designated seat and stared blankly at the sky. How long had he been staring at the sky? Oh-ook, boo-oo, boo-oo, huh? What's this noise? Sejun looked in the direction where the noise came from. It was the sound coming from the rabbit couple's burrow. The sound stopped abruptly. What was that? Just as Sejun was about to stare at the sky again and zone out. Oh-ook, boo-oo, boo-oo. The sound was heard again. Listening carefully, it was the sound of panting. No way. These guys, as soon as the rabbit couple made their home, they began breeding activities. Afterward, the breeding activities continued several more times. A few hours later, at 2 p.m., Sejun got up to do his afternoon work. At that time, the rabbit couple came out of the burrow happily together, and quickly started doing the farm work Sejun was about to do. Peep peep, swoosh, the husband rabbit hummed while watering the crops with a watering can, and vzz, snip snip, the wife rabbit accompanied her husband's song by cutting the leaves with scissors. The husband sang and the wife followed. It reminded him of the phrase husband sings, wife follows. However, what bothered Sejun was something else. What are those things? It turned out that the watering can held by the husband rabbit and the apron worn by the wife rabbit were items. Water kept coming out of the watering can non-stop, and the apron seemed to have a space magic on it, as the wife rabbit took out farming tools like scissors or shovels whenever she needed them. He was a bit envious. They had such equipment. He had to dig and tear with his hands and carry water. Watching the rabbit's work made time pass quickly. But soon, he got bored. At that moment, he saw the light passing through the pet bottle, refracting and concentrating into a strong light. Seeing that, an idea came to mind. He remembered a scene from a TV show where survival experts used pet bottles filled with water to start a fire. Should I try to start a fire? It seemed like the well-dried leaves would burn well. All right. Sejun got up and collected the well-dried leaves, and then, swoosh, swoosh. He tore the leaves thinly to gather them well in the center, so the fire could catch easily, and Sejun began to focus the light on the dried green onion leaves using the pet bottle filled with water like a magnifying glass. Squeak, squeak. When Sejun stayed still in the same position for more than 20 minutes, the rabbit couple approached him. They seemed curious about what the farm owner was doing. About 10 minutes passed, and the rabbits started dozing off, seemingly bored. At that moment, smoke started to rise from the finely torn pile of green onion leaves. An ember was created. It's working. Sejun concentrated even more on shining the light from the pet bottle on the ember. The ember grew stronger, and the smoke became thicker. Woo, woo. Sejun carefully blew air into the finely torn leaves containing the ember. The rabbit couple woke up from the sound of the blowing and looked at Sejun, and then, squeak, squeak. They were astonished to see the smoking green onion leaves. After blowing for a while, The fire started and flames burst out. He, I did it, squeak, squeak. The rabbit couple looked at Sejun with admiring eyes. They didn't have any items that could start a fire among their belongings. The first thing Sejun did when the fire started was to roast green onions to eat. He just wanted to fill his stomach with something warm. The dried green onions had become too hard to eat, like firewood, so he roasted the ones he had picked today. As the surface of the green onion turned black from the roasting, Sejun lifted it by holding the end, and then, ouch, hot, he placed the black and green onion on another leaf and peeled off the burnt skin while blowing on his fingers. He lifted the roasted green onion and put the peeled part in his mouth. Puck puck, apostrophe. So sweet. Sejun's eyes widened at the incredible taste. It was like sugar was running wild in his mouth. An intense sweetness exploded. Sejun quickly threw a few more green onions into the flames and began eating the roasted green onions hurriedly. Squeak. Seeing Sejun's reaction, the husband rabbit bravely placed a green onion into the fire, and shortly after, squeak, squeak, the rabbit couple ate the peeled roasted leeks with emotional expressions. All three of them ate with enthusiasm, getting black smudges on their faces. On the 7th day of being trapped in the tower, Sejun went to sleep after filling his stomach with warm food for the first time. Beep beep, beep beep. May 19th, 6 a.m. On the 10th day of the disaster. All right, Sejun got up energetically today as well. Squeak, squeak. The rabbit couple, who had woken up first, greeted Sejun. Yeah, good morning. Splish splash, splish splash. Sejun went to the pond to wash his face and sat down in his spot. Squeak. The wife rabbit brought the roasted green onion. Thanks, Sejun said as he received the food. Munch gulp, munch gulp. While eating the roasted green onions, Sejun looked at the field where the crops were planted. The green onions had already been harvested, and the ground was damp. The rabbits, who had woken up early, had already finished their work. On top of that, the wife rabbit had prepared a meal. It was so nice that they took care of it themselves. However, there was even less to do in a place where there was already little to do. I need to move around a bit. Today, he decided to transplant the cherry tomatoes that he had put off. It was time to transplant them because if they grew too close together, they wouldn't be able to absorb nutrients properly. Sejun dug the soil with his hands, made a place to transplant the cherry tomatoes, and, with a small spoon-sized shovel, the husband rabbit carefully scooped and moved one by one. They also moved the 6 new sprouts they had planted later. A total of 58 sprouts were planted in 6 rows of 10 each. Phew. Seeing the neatly planted sprouts in a row brought a sense of pride. Sejun was proud of doing even small things these days. As soon as Sejun finished transplanting the cherry tomatoes, he started a new task, making torches. He wove several leaves together to make a handle and wrapped the end with finely torn dried leaves hundreds of times. Dried green onion leaves seemed to be suitable for torches as they maintained the fire for a long time. The green onion leaves burned for so long that there was no need to manage the fire separately. At first, it would have been tedious to continue, but now he found pleasure in using his will, body, and effort to create something essential to his life. After investing several hours, he made a torch and an alarm rang to notify it was time to sleep. May 20th, 6 a.m. On the 11th day of the disaster, the morning dawned. All right, beep, beep, right, good morning. As soon as he got up, he greeted the rabbit couple and went to the pond to wash his face. The pond was brighter than yesterday. Sejun, who had always been uncomfortable with the darkness when washing his face, installed a torch by the pond first. Nice. He. Sejun looked at the burning torch and brought his face closer to the pond to wash his face. At that moment, splash, a fish suddenly jumped out of the pond and tried to bite Sejun's face. Ugh! Sejun hurriedly leaned back. The fishy smell of water from the fish's body brushed past his nose. He barely dodged it. The fish that fell to the ground wriggled to return to the water. What? What is this? Sejun, who was flustered, approached the wriggling fish and took a closer look. It had golden stripes on a black background on its body and sharp teeth. He could have had his nose cut off if he was just a little bit late. Sejun pushed the fish to the opposite side of the pond so it couldn't escape. He then examined the pond. Oh, inside the pond, Several fish of the same species that had just attacked Sejun were swimming. Why are they here? While Sejun was thinking about the reason, the fish wriggled to escape back to the pond. I don't have time for this. Sejun hurriedly caught the fish that had fallen to the ground. On the 11th day of being trapped in the tower, they finally had the chance to eat fish. Chapter 5, The Green Cherry Tomato Ripens. Sejun's hand tightly gripped the fish, which struggled and opened its mouth wide to attack Sejun, then clamped down hard. Snap, snap, sharp teeth clashed, making a sharp sound. Each time, Sejun held on tighter, fearing that if he lost his grip, he might lose a finger. Sejun held the fish tightly and ran to the spot below the hole in the ceiling where the fire was. Meanwhile, the fish, which had been fiercely resisting, began to breathe faster, and its body went limp. Upon reaching the fire, Sejun carefully laid down a single green onion leaf on the ground. He carefully placed the fish on the leaf and covered it with another green onion leaf, and then, swoosh, he tore the green onion leaves to the thickness of a finger to use them as strings, wrapped the fish in 2 pieces of the torn leaves in a cross shape, and tied them together. I hope this tastes amazing. Sejun carefully placed the fish wrapped in green onion leaves in the center of the fire pit, and then, middle dot middle dot middle dot middle dot middle dot middle dot. He waited. He watched for a long time. Sniff sniff. Ah, it smells great. The rich, oily scent melted into the rising steam and began to fill the cave. He remembered his childhood, when his mother was preparing a meal. The smell of food would spread from the kitchen and take over the entire house. When he came home after school and the smell filled the house, his mood would lift if it was one of his favorite side dishes. Back then, even the waiting time before eating was happy. Gurgle, a noise interrupted Sejun's thoughts. He was hungry, but he held back. He was determined to fill his empty stomach with something delicious. Gurgle, hold on just a bit longer. I'll put something really delicious in you. Sejun consoled his stomach and patiently waited. He waited for it to be completely cooked. And when the scent became deeper and richer, I can't wait any longer. I can't stand it. Sejun used the dried, hardened green onion leaves to remove the grilled fish wrapped in palm leaves from the fire. He carefully untied the knot that held the green onion leaves together. Whoosh! When he untied the string and removed the green onion leaves, a dense aroma of fish mixed with the scent of green onion leaves spread. Wow! Sejun marveled at the sight of the moist, glistening fish. Gulp! Sejun folded the fish in half, tore off a piece of protruding flesh, and put it in his mouth. It was perfectly cooked. There was no fishy taste, and the chewy texture was felt as soon as he bit into it, with the savory flavor spreading in his mouth the more he chewed. Amazing! Gobble gobble! Sejun devoured the fish in a frenzy. Ha! I finished it already? Sejun looked at the fish with only bones left and wore a crestfallen expression. At that moment, beep, beep, a sound of disappointment came from the side. Sejun wasn't the only one disappointed. Huh? Sejun looked at the source of the sound, and the rabbit couple was wearing a lost expression as they stared at the fish bones left. No way, no, it couldn't be. Rabbits eating fish, but on second thought, the rabbit couple preferred to roast and eat the leaves like Sejun. Do you guys eat meat too? Sejun asked. Beep, as if to say they also just found out now. The rabbit couple simultaneously turned their heads. They seemed annoyed that Sejun had eaten it all by himself. Sorry, I didn't know you guys eat meat too. Sejun scratched his head and got up to go to the pond. He intended to catch a fish. The number of fish in the pond had increased since the last time he saw them, but where are they coming from? As Sejun examined the pond with a torch, he noticed a small hole about the size of a hand in the corner of the pond. Huh? A fish entered through the hole at that moment. Ah, they're coming in through that hole. It seemed they were attracted to the light of the torch. Sejun finally figured out where the fish were coming from. Unconsciously, Sejun brought the torch closer to the pond to take a closer look. Splash! A fish jumped towards the torch, opening its mouth. Huh? Whoosh! Sejun quickly lifted the torch to avoid the fish. Snap! The fish bit the air. Splash! The fish that failed to hunt returned to the water. What's going on? Sejun cautiously brought the torch close to the water again. Splash! Splash! The fish jumped up to hunt the torch. Whoosh! Sejun lifted the torch to avoid them. Snap! Snap! Splash! Splash! The fish failed to hunt again and returned to the water. Aha! Sejun realized what the fish were reacting to. The fish would jump when they saw the torch moving near the surface, thinking it was prey. Now that he knew how to make the fish jump, catching them was easy. Sejun shook the torch near the pond. Splash! A fish opened its mouth and jumped towards the torch. Here it comes. Sejun focused on the movement of the fish. And when the fish reached its highest point and was about to fall back down. Now, thwack! Sejun swung the torch at the rising fish, knocking it out of the pond and onto the ground. The fallen fish writhed to breathe. In the meantime, thwack, thwack, Sejun sent 2 more fish to the ground. Holding the 3 fish that had stopped breathing, he approached the fire pit. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The rabbit couple cheered for Sejun as if they were never upset, sending him admiring gazes. Ahem! Sejun's shoulders straightened. At that moment, he felt like a hero. Squeak, squeak. The male rabbit brought some green onion leaves and volunteered to help with the cooking. Rustle, rustle. Next to them, the female rabbit tore the green onion leaves into small pieces to make strings. It's done, Sejun spoke as he placed the 3rd fish on the fire. All that was left was to wrap the fish in green onion leaves and tie them up, so the cooking process can be started quickly. And again, they waited happy. On the 11th day of being trapped in the tower, Sejun and the rabbit couple filled their bellies with fish and went to sleep. Beep beep beep, beep beep beep. June 19th, 6 a.m. It was the morning of the 41st day of being trapped in the tower. Let's get moving. Sejun woke up and approached the pond. However, there was now an additional small pond next to the old one, which hadn't been there before. In order to avoid the fish's attacks, a small faucet-like water stream was connected next to the pond. Sejun washed his face and fetched water from there. Splish, splash. Sejun washed his face and went to the field. In the field, centered around Sejun's designated rock, there were green onions in the front, cherry tomatoes that had grown to the height of Sejun's knees on the left, and sprouts of sweet potatoes on the right. Finally, the long-awaited sweet potato sprouts appeared. All the crops Sejun had planted on the first day of the crisis had safely taken root at the top. I'm proud. A lot had happened in the meantime. On the 32nd day of being trapped in the tower, a blue moon appeared again. With that, Sejun realized that the blue moon cycle on the floor he was on was 30 days, and a few days ago, in their burrow, Mrs. Rabbit gave birth to 6 babies, and the family grew. Beep, beep, as the energetic cries of the baby rabbits came from inside the burrow. Daddy Rabbit busily started watering the green onion leaves. I have to prepare breakfast. Seeing the busy rabbit couple, Sejun wanted to help them. Snap, snap. He broke off 10 green onion leaves and put them on the fire, and the rest were laid on the ground to dry. Then he approached the pond and waved the torch from side to side over the water. Splash, splash. The fish that jumped up to hunt the torchlight. Sejun swung the torch towards them. Thump. Today, luckily, it was a one-hit kill. Flutter, flutter. He covered 2 fish with green onion leaves, tied them with stems, and put them on the fire. In the meantime, he took out the well-cooked green onions and ate them. It's comforting to have something warm inside. After eating the cooked green onions, Sejun watered the crops and spent some time staring blankly. Sniff, sniff. A delicious smell began to spread. Tap, tap. Sejun began to cut the strings that tied the fish wrapped in leaves as he took them out of the fire. Just then, the husband rabbit came out of the burrow, wobbling. Rabbit, Sejun called the daddy rabbit. Beep. The husband rabbit seemed to be tired from parenting. His response lacked energy. Share this with your wife. Beep. The moved husband rabbit hurriedly took the fish and went into the burrow. However, beep, beep. As the baby rabbits woke up, the rabbit couple could only eat the fish after a while. Beep beep, beep beep. June 19th, 5:00 a.m. On the 50th day of the crisis, the smartphone rang the alarm for the last time and died. Fortunately, the rabbits woke up precisely at 5 a.m. and went to bed at 7 p.m. It seemed that there would be no change of the time difference due to the continuous daylight if they followed the rabbit's daily rhythm. You did well. Sejun put the dead smartphone in his bag with the already dead laptop. At that time, beep, beep, the rabbit couple, who seemed to have become familiar with parenting by now, came out of the burrow and greeted him. Ah, good morning. Swoosh, swish, swish. while the husband rabbit watered the crops with a watering can and the wife rabbit cut the green onion leaves. Thump, thump, Sejun caught fish from the pond, then holding the caught fish, he went to the fire and wrapped the fish in leaves and put them in the fire. The wife rabbit took out the roasted green onions, beautifully arranged them on the leaves, and handed them to Sejun before going back into the burrow with her husband. They went inside to prepare breakfast for their babies. Munch, munch, as he satisfied his hunger by eating the green onion. Huh? Sejun noticed a small yellow flower blooming at the end of a cherry tomato branch. He remembered what he had read on the internet: if there were no bees or wind, pollination wouldn't happen. There was a gentle breeze in the cave, but Sejun decided to make sure pollination took place by carefully rubbing the flower with the fishbone. Please work, Sejun pollinated the flower with his earnest heart. Let's get moving. As soon as Sejun got up, he approached the rock wall of the cave, and, swoosh, he used a fishbone to etch a line on the rock wall. Next to it, there were 2 vertical lines and 10 lines above. It had been 61 days since getting trapped in the tower. He had been recording the date like this since the smartphone battery died. It's already been 61 days. Just as Sejun's mood began to sink, the cave became noisy. Beep, beep, baby. As morning came, the baby rabbits came out of the burrow one after another, following their parents. Beep, beep. The rabbit couple greeted Sejun in the morning and asked for help. All right, let's go. Lately, Sejun occasionally looked after the baby rabbits. It wasn't a big deal, just making sure they didn't go anywhere dangerous. While Sejun watched the baby rabbits, the husband rabbit watered the field, and the wife rabbit cut the leaves to prepare breakfast. The baby rabbits stayed quiet when given food, so the meal was peaceful. After the meal, the rabbit couple went back into the burrow with their babies. Sejun washed his face and went to the cherry tomato field. The cherry tomato field had become a flower garden with more and more flowers blooming, and Sejun lightly shook the branches with cherry tomato flowers. Please work, please work. Since there were now too many flowers to pollinate one by one, he lightly shook the branches and recited the pollination spell. That's when, a tiny green cherry tomato, smaller than a bean, appeared between the fallen petals. On the 61st day of being trapped in the tower, the green cherry tomato finally ripened. It was the day before the blue moon.